Hello, this is the Growth League podcast. My name is Caleb Clark, and my mission for this show is pretty simple. It's to learn from marketers on how they're playing the great game of marketing leadership. Their ideas, experiences, perspective, wins and losses, and the playbook that they've established over time. Listen, there's more than one way to lead a marketing team and a marketing function. So if you're a VP, a CMO, director, or someone aspiring to fill one of these marketing leadership roles in the future, tune in to learn from some of the best in the business.
I don't have all the answers. And I don't think that's the role of a leader. I think a role of a leader is to have the vision and know where you want to go and work with your team and really empower them to help get there.
Yeah. Marisa, welcome. I am here with Marisa Harris. She's the Director of Brand and Solutions Innovations at Staples Canada. We're here at the gathering in beautiful Banff. It's the 10-year anniversary. Marisa, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Caleb. I'm really excited to chat and have the conversation.
And you're speaking tomorrow. I
sure am.
And you're excited for it.
You know what? I'm telling myself I'm excited, but I'm not going to lie. I'm nervous. Yeah.
That's good. That's what it's all about.
But you know what? You gotta make yourself uncomfortable, because when you're uncomfortable is when you grow. Totally. And so that's why I'm kind of taking this challenge to take the stage.
I love it. So Staples is a very important brand for Canadians, kids to middle school to university. It's all kind of been a part of our growing up. Tell us a bit of a recap on your journey as a marketing leader. Maybe not conventional, perhaps, on how it started, and what brought you to Staples?
You know, when I look back 20 years ago, when I, graduated university and I had this, this is what I want to be, I knew I had this idea of where I wanted to be. And I think what I've learned is that having a vision of the destination is important, but embracing the journey is also equally important. And I think sometimes if you get really caught up in you're not getting there the way that you want, it can actually impact some really interesting opportunities. And so I had this really unconventional path. I started my career off as a law clerk working at a Bay Street firm, and decided to go back to school and thought I was going to be a lawyer. That was what I was going to do. Yeah. And then all of a sudden I was, partnering with my program director on one of the areas that I majored in. And she one day said to me, she goes, have you ever thought about marketing? And I hadn't. And then she was a great mentor, and she encouraged me to explore that, and I did. And then that doesn't mean that all of a sudden I got a job in marketing. Right. I actually went into recruiting. And then I went into, then I got onto the agency side, and then it's a long story of 20 years, but then I ended up at Staples. And even my path to getting to Staples, it was an interesting combination of, just relationships that I've built, I'll be honest. I really you've got your capabilities, you've got your talent, and you do the work, but there's so much about the relationships that you build and the connections that you make, and also the authenticity. I think sometimes we kind of go into our professional life trying to put on this persona. Totally. And I am who you see. This is who I am. This is who I am professionally, who I am as a person. And I think that does a lot, because especially today, we talk so much about authenticity in marketing. Right. And, the humanity. And that is something that is always around you in your life. Yeah.
And as a marketing leader, how do you keep that when the world and social media and society is telling you got to be a marketing leader in this way, X, Y, Z, right? How can you be your authentic self and your version of marketing leadership? I think
you learn along the way. I think that's another thing in your career, is that I really have I've worked with some really wonderful people, both colleagues and also leaders, and seeing the difference in leadership and seeing how they navigated, they influenced, right. How they dealt with challenges. Those are all opportunities that I use to learn and also then think about the kind of leader that I want to be. Right. And I took examples of like bad leaders I had, and I don't want to do that with my team. And then also wanting just as a person, like how would I want to be led?
Yeah.
And so I use that a lot with the team that I have now is I want to be the leader that I wish I had when I was coming up.
And you use that as your North Star in deciding what to do on a day-to-day basis, how to build those management systems.
Yeah.
Tell me about the team.
So I have a small but mighty team.
Yeah.
I have my role at Staples, like center of my desk is brand building.
Yeah.
And so I've got a small but mighty team made up of a PR manager, a brand content manager, and a social media manager.
Okay.
And we work together very collaboratively. They also are women, and so they're really amazing, strong, smart women, and I value them as individuals as well as marketers. And so I also think that a great way of leadership is to also empower your team and understand. There was this David Ogilvy quote that I remember reading way back when in my early years, and I actually worked at Ogilvy at the start of my career. So he said a quote, and I'm probably going to butcher it because it's not totally on point, but it was something to the effect of like, a great leader, you hire people who are smarter than you. And so I don't have all the answers. And I don't think that's the role of a leader. I think a role of a leader is to have the vision and know where you want to go and work with your team and really empower them to help get there.
Yeah. I mean, you have an opportunity to lead them and leverage their unique skills and expertise to drive the brand function forward, but you have an unbelievable opportunity to sharpen your own sword by watching them, listening and learning to them. That's leadership, right?
Exactly.
How would you describe you and your team's mandate at the end of the day right now for Staples? When it all boils down, what is the core responsible for?
Well, I'm going to be talking about that on Friday.
Okay.
But I'll tease it out.
This won't be released before Friday. So.
I think that the three things that I have been that I have kind of created and used as our North Star with brand building at Staples is that we are focused on invigorating consumers with our brand, edutaining them to help create some of that awareness about who we are now. So you said, people know Staples as an office supply store, right? Like we've been around since 1991. We're a legacy brand. There's campaigns that are iconic that, you say Staples and immediately you think of a campaign, right? But we're a lot more than that now. And so, using, these words also help us think about how we want to create programs to connect with consumers. So it really is three words. So it's invigorate, edutain, and connect. And it's a little bit of flipping on its head that marketing funnel of awareness, consideration, and act.
Yeah, right.
Is that, using these different words gets us to think differently. And it is helping us in the programs that we're creating to show people and tell people about who Staples is today.
That's awesome. And so taking that as the framework, describe some of the day-to-day and some of the blocking and tackling that you and your team do to fulfill that vision and that framework. What are some of the things that you find yourselves doing, mobilizing against on a day-to-day?
I think that as brand marketers, I think the biggest thing that we're blocking and tackling is performance marketing. Okay. Right? Like, so we are so focused in the landscape that we're in because it is so competitive, and you're not just competing against your competition of brands. Yeah. You're also competing against podcasters, streamers, vloggers, like influencers. Like, there's so much more in the marketplace now. Like, what do you do to get your message in front of people? And performance marketing is kind of connected to that, right? Because what performance marketing has been allowing us to do is like with, ROAS, which is like a word that I honestly can't stand. Attribution, right? That's great, and you can do a campaign, and you can say, here's the ROAS or here's the attribution to the business. But did you build the brand?
Right. Is one of your competitors a misunderstanding of who Staples is and what Staples is meant to be. You kind of alluded to that there's a legacy understanding of who the brand is, what the brand is, but are you needing to re-educate, edutain?
Yeah, I think so. And we've reimagined our brand, right? And so we're not that different. Like, we still have office supplies, and we still have, people come to us for back to school shopping, and we are a destination for small businesses to also get the things to run their business. I think where we don't get credit, though, and I think part of it is our legacy, is that because we've got this ingrained image in consumers' minds of back to school and supplies, that we don't get the credit for the fact that we actually have technology, that we have, furniture, that we have services, that we actually have so many more solutions available to support Canadians. Right. That effectively is like a one-stop shop. And that has been we're also competing against our own legacy to help reframe our brand in people's minds.
Yeah, that's great. So getting into you as a marketing leader, you've described a little bit the mandate for yourself, for your team. I'm going to ask a simple question, but why do you personally care about Staples, about what you guys are doing? What brings you to the office every day and compels you to do it?
I think if you were to ask my boss or my colleagues or friends, what's one word about me that describes me, it'd be passionate. Okay. I'm very passionate about generally everything in my life, right? Personally, professionally, but I am very passionate about Staples because I do think it's a wonderful brand, and I've been part of the journey from when it did reimagine itself in 2018. Right. So I do believe that when you look at the retail landscape and you see all these brands that are either direct to consumer, all these new brands coming up, and then you see some of these legacy brands that are just kind of failing, I really believe Staples is one that we can continue to have relevancy for consumers into the future. We do have a place. And in a lot of ways, as I was thinking about the Gathering and Staples' role, we are in a lot of ways a cult brand. Yeah. I think that we're not an overt cult brand like a Lululemon or I'm trying to think of another one. Skittles, yeah right? But we are a cult brand in more of this subliminal way, because when you do talk to people and I say Staples, people immediately have this affinity for Staples. Mm-hmm. There's this, there is a memory of a place where I went, a happy memory of I got stuff for back to school, or you helped me with my business. Yeah. So in a lot of ways, we do have that cult following, and I think that is also what drives me. Is I want to foster that cult following and make it not subliminal but more overt, right. And continue to help kind of bring that brand forward. And I don't know, I guess also selfishly, I see a lot of opportunity as a brand marketer to do some really cool, exciting stuff that other brands are doing out there too.
And I think that edutain, there's a lot of depth you can go on that.
Yeah.
Sure. Can you bring us back to, if you can recall, your first 30 days in the role? Because you were in a different role before at Staples, kind of helping us get through COVID a little bit.
Yeah.
At least helping the workforce at Staples get through. But with this current role, brand and solutions innovation. So first 30 days on the job, they ask you to take over this mandate. What did you do? Did you lay any brand new foundation or framework? Did you listen and learn? Can you tell us about that?
I already came in with a passionate point of view about some of the things that I wanted to do differently. And really the first thing that I wanted to do was to take more of a social first perspective on the work that my team does.
Right.
So that was kind of one of the first things, is understanding where consumers are connecting with brands, and social platforms is really where it's at. And immediately looking at our social content, our social strategy, and taking a pause and saying to the team, you know what, guys, we gotta take a moment, take a breather, look at what we're doing, look at the performance we're having, right? And assessing, are we really creating that engaging content to invigorate, edutain, and connect?
And were you given that opportunity to, hey, if you want to pause, or was it, you got to jump on this moving train?
It was, I'll say, like a light pause, because when you work in retail, I think
Keep it moving.
you got to keep, right, yeah, you got to keep, like you say pause and people are like, what? What?
Hold on, guys. I'd like to just turn everything off right now and really go to the drawing board.
Yeah.
No.
So we kept, so I'll say like pauses in, we kept the lights on, but we did take a moment to start looking at our work in a more, with more, with a different lens, I'll say.
Yeah.
And then, that resulted in us finding a fantastic social media partner. They're called the Influence Agency, so shout out to them.
Yeah, shout out.
Shout out. I love them. They're fantastic. And, creating a really amazing connection with a partner like the Influence Agency. And I think that's also something from a leadership perspective. Having been on the agency side,
right,
and now coming to the client side, I understand that sometimes on the client side, it's so busy and you get really caught up in like, I just got to do. And so you don't give a lot of, or maybe you don't give enough or very little information to an agency partner. You're like,
right,
here's a problem I need you to solve. Go do it. Yeah. But there's more that's needed. And so I've also been trying to embrace this idea of just really true collaboration. Like, let's really work together. Let's help you get more ingrained in our brand and fully understand, our business and why we do certain things, why we don't do certain things, why some decisions are made.
Bring them in.
Bring them in, yeah. And it honestly, it has been like transformative.
Tell me maybe an example of what leaning into that, treating them as a extension of your team, bringing them into the fold on things that maybe aren't aligned in the brief or in the outline, but what has that allowed for you, and what has that created in the relationship?
What it does is, on our side, because we are so busy, like when they are brought in, when you have these things that happen very quickly, like there's a moment like, oh my God, we have to jump on this right now. Right. It actually makes it a lot easier, because it doesn't become like, let's have a meeting and let's do a brief. We can actually, in some cases, depending on the size, I just give them a call and be like, hey guys, I need you to like jump on this. And because they understand our brand, they're like, okay, no problem, got it.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a topic that comes up a lot with marketing leaders, and that is sometimes there's difficult conversations that have to happen. There's being held to account. There's, but in the pursuit of deepening the health of the relationship, you've learned things over time from your perspective on the agency side and now on the client side. But what's your playbook on creating that accountability, having those difficult conversations when they have to be had, whether it's an internal team member, an agency partner, etc.?
So this kind of goes back to the way I approach leadership. Is I think it's so important. Like, kindness goes such a long way, and there's ways that you can approach difficult conversations that can actually be positive. Right? And so, sometimes I have like those difficult conversations where I'm pissed and not happy about something. But I try to take my emotion out of it, and I just try, before I have the conversation, take a pause and like understand the full situation, what happened, how it panned out. And most importantly, it's not about focusing on the problem. I always try to go into these difficult conversations with, what did we learn from this so that we don't do it again, right? And I also think the other thing with difficult conversations is, and I guess maybe because I've been on the agency side, is sometimes it's quick for us to always wag the finger at the agency and just be like, well, it's their fault. Yeah. Sometimes it's our fault. Sure. So I also think sometimes when it's warranted, right, like you got to take accountability too.
That's great. I mean, you haven't been in this game for a super long time, you say, but you're definitely well beyond, what the tenure defines. So you told me that when we were first chatting, is that sometimes you feel a little bit of impostor syndrome because you haven't been a lifelong marketer. But who cares? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I think the imposter syndrome is, probably part of it is because I'm a woman and I'm in this leadership role. Sometimes I go into meetings and it's just a table full of men, and that can be intimidating too. And or women, but also people who have a lot more experience.
Right.
And that can be super intimidating. But at the end of the day, I think I just also, in my mind, I just say to myself, like, they're just also people, and at the end of the day as well, and with opinions and perspectives, and I'm coming in with my own.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to have the confidence.
Hell yeah.
Right? Like you need to know it. So it's not so much like that Richard Branson saying of like, take the job and figure it out. A little bit of that. But I think also to I value the experience that I have. And I think you also have to be confident in yourself and not cocky, right? Because there's a balance, right? But you want to be confident in yourself and know like, I got this. I know this.
That's awesome. And that's a really good word of encouragement to all marketing leaders listening to this, because a lot of them don't have that much tenure or that industry experience, but go in, understand, meet your team, engage, be passionate, and then have conviction about it. And I can kind of sense that only knowing you for a short period of time.
The other thing I'll say too, sorry, Caleb, let's jump in, is I think the other thing that marketers also need to understand, because part of what we do is we're marketing to consumers, we're selling to people. And we get so caught up in our jobs as marketers. I think the other thing that I use as well is like, I'm also a consumer.
Yeah.
So in my role, like when we're doing back to school, like I'm a mom, I have 2 kids. They're 13 and 6. Yeah. And when I'm looking at what we're doing and how we're going to market, I'm like, well, would that resonate with me as a mom?
Yeah.
Right? And like you have to take your hat off sometimes as marketers and just look at it as consumers and think about like how would I take this story? Like what would I think about it? Does it make me laugh?
Totally.
Is that piece of copy like engaging enough for me?
But you got to be intentional about wearing that persona hat.
Absolutely. So it's a bit about, how do you juggle?
Yeah.
How do you juggle it?
Yeah. Well, having a great team is key for that, because you don't have, right. Let me ask you this: what scares the heck out of you? What keeps you up at night? What's the most painful?
ROAS.
Okay, tell me more.
No, I'm kidding.
As a marketing leader, playing this game of marketing leadership, what causes pain for you personally, emotionally?
I think what causes a lot of anxiety and stress is that there's no silver bullet, and there's no like silver bullet that's going to get you results like tomorrow. And when I think agnostic of whatever company you are leading marketing for, shareholders, leadership are always wanting to understand sales.
Yeah.
And that at the end of the day, that causes anxiety, because sometimes the marketing that we do, it actually needs time to grow and it needs time to build, right? And then on the flip side, you also need time to build strategies, right? You need time to like properly build an integrated program to go to market. And I think those two things, there's never enough time, right? And so a lot of times it's, well, we need this now. And then you're like, but we need a strategy. Well, we don't have a strategy. Just do X, right? And then I think in the cluttered landscape that we're in, it's like there's so many touch points for consumers. You have to really think about all the different ways that you're going to be getting your message out there. So that's what keeps me up at night, is just this idea of like, we need, from a marketing perspective, there needs to be an appreciation for the work that we do and the value that we bring that is beyond ROAS.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you next is totally, because I think the ROAS conversation or attribution or how is this campaign, it comes from a place of not full understanding, other members of the organization not understanding what you're doing or what. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me about how you and your team have facilitated communication internally in terms of here's the vision, here's the story, here's what we're trying to do, and almost creating a sense of shared ownership of the function? How do you approach that?
Again, collaboration and just openness and transparency, just when you go into meetings, like just from every time that we share what we're doing, we always integrate in like a reminder of what our brand building strategy is. We have a slide for like invigorate, edutain, connect. We always do talk about, from a brand building, we're building consumer-led content that is going to support and facilitate that performance marketing, and just really trying to create stronger connections within the marketing team so that we're actually working more in tune as opposed to siloed.
When you say we, who are these critical departments or stakeholders that you typically need to create shared belief with? Or
there's I think every organization will be different. At Staples we have a combination of, we have different marketing leaders. So there's my colleague who leads paid and media, and then our digital team and our email team, but then we also have other stakeholders like our merchants, or other business stakeholders within the business. So that's also where, work can sometimes, or even developing ideas does take kind of conviction in the belief of what you are doing, because sometimes when all of a sudden you go from creating something with a small group, and then you've got to get the buy-in, and you start to kind of see it expanding and more people coming in and weighing in, that can also make it a bit muddy.
Frankenstein marketing program.
Yeah.
Okay. I have two more questions for you.
Okay.
The first one is, you kind of described it a little bit before with passion, but what would you claim to be your superpower as a marketing leader today? The things that you rely on as you go into, I don't want to equivalent to battle, but what are the things you feel most confident on that others would say, damn, this is her superpower?
I try to think beyond my role. So while I'm very clear that my role is about brand building, when we are creating, even from ideation to execution, there's always this kind of vision in my brain around connecting the dots to other areas. So X, and so if I'm doing X, how is that?
So what?
So what? What is that going to impact over here? So we go to launch, and then that's going to connect over here. Okay, hold on. And then that's going to result in this happening down the road. So I think we also, if it's a piece of advice, I would recommend that, as a marketing leader, that, you empower your team to help kind of build, and you focus on thinking further ahead. Right? Think ahead to everything. Think ahead to not just when you go to market, but also think ahead of like, okay, when I'm presenting this to leadership, what am I going to anticipate that they're going to push back on? How am I going to answer that? What's my contingency plan if this happens and that impacts what I'm trying to do now? Totally. So I think it's having all of that and being ready for it when it does happen. I think that's really important.
And that allows you and your team to deliver these great campaigns and this great work, because you're not always burdened by, we got to get it out the door now. We've already thought about this. We've built in time before it was even a conversation.
Yeah, exactly. You have to. And I think anyone who is listening it would resonate with them that you've had so many moments where you spent so much time on something and you're so proud of it, and then all of a sudden something happens and it's like shit. Yeah.
I love it. Here's my last question.
Okay.
We all are on this lifelong journey. I think the best marketing leaders are on a lifelong journey of improving, changing perspective, kind of evolving how they show up from a leadership and from a market function standpoint. What do you do on a semi-regular basis, or maybe it's a very regular basis, to kind of keep your sword sharp? What do you do for growing Marisa in this function?
I stay curious. So I am, I think part of a lifelong journey is that we are also lifelong learners, right? So I think that we get so caught up in like the school journey and like I'm in grade whatever and I go to university and then I'm done. But we continue to learn as we get into our professional lives. And that learning isn't necessarily as structured as school. Right. But when you're in your role, or whatever role you are in your career, you're constantly learning. And so I say stay curious, and stay curious in every way. Stay curious of if you're looking to continue to progress to the next level, When you go into meetings with leadership team, like observe, understand like the dynamics and what is happening. Like that's a way to stay curious and learn, because that's going to help you think about, see that, I've got to think about that or work on that if I want to progress, right? And also in your role, like I'm on social media all the time. And a lot of times I'm not on social media, like for my personal stuff.
Yeah.
I'm on social media because I just want to see what other brands are doing. I want to see what's trending. I want to engage with content. And I bring inspiration back. Like I've got a group chat with my team.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly like sending them things of like, oh, look at what this brand did. This is really cool. Like, oh, look at this interesting piece of content we just saw. And then we talk about it and we all like share these ideas. So yeah, stay curious.
Totally. So their phones will be blowing up for the next 2 days, right? With all this.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank
that was
you.
awesome. It was a great story about how you've meandered your way to this role, but some of the very obvious foundation setting you've done from a team leadership, a function leadership, organizational integration. So much to learn from you. So I appreciate everyone. Marisa,